Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar, 7 Indispensable Ingredients for a Successful Automation of Business Process. My name is Marcelo Becker, and I am an International Product and Market Manager here at SoftExpert. Today's webinar will be presented by Mr. Gus Oliveira. Gus has over 10 years experience in the financial and business development field, working in large companies both in the United States and Brazil as a financial analyst, business strategy consultant, and project consultant. I wish you all a great webinar. Hello, Gus.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another webinar promoted by SoftExpert. Today's event addresses a theme that has aroused much interest in the market, which is business process automation. So, when you think of automating a process, what factors need to be considered and what are the ingredients for success? Our proposal is to present some of the points that are important when it comes to the automation of processes, when it comes to choosing a platform, and present these ingredients or factors so that the initiative is successful. Now, do not worry about taking notes. I highly suggest you focus on the presentation. This material will be shared and can be used as reference source in the future, okay? Well, folks, this is the agenda that will guide today's presentation, and here are the top topics that will be addressed. We're going to start off by talking a little bit about SoftExpert, about the company's experience when it comes to process management and process automation. Let's talk about the challenges organizations are facing today and how they relate to business processes. We'll define the concept of a business process so that everyone has the same understanding. We'll also discuss a little bit about the main difficulties companies face when they are moved by manual processes. After that, we'll present a situation in which process automation is recommended and when it is not recommended, followed by we're going to present the 7 ingredients that are critical to the success of automation initiatives. In closing the event, we'll show how SoftExpert has been helping companies overcome the challenges of automating processes. So, who is SoftExpert? SoftExpert is a company that has been in the market for more than 20 years and has always worked with the focus on providing software solutions for management excellence. And when you talk about management excellence, it's nearly impossible not to discuss processes. They are the basis for any organization to evolve in its management while also becoming more mature and more competitive. Today, more than 2,000 customers and 300,000 users worldwide are served directly by one of the company's units or through a network of partners present in more than 30 countries. SoftExpert also offers consulting services. There are several successful cases in mapping and optimization of processes, elimination of rework and waste, as well as the automation of workflows. These involve organizations from the most diverse segments such as education, government agencies, pharmaceutical industries, hospitals, organizations related to the food industry, automotive, agribusiness, among others. Okay, so let's get into the topic of the day, talking a little bit about the current market scenario and how it relates to processes. The first important point to keep in mind is that today, the world changes at a very high speed. We experience transformations all the time. In the past, companies underwent major changes, but they took a very long time. Sometimes it could take years or decades to consolidate. Today, only in 1 year, the changes are huge. If you look in the rearview mirror, many of the things that we did a year ago are different from what we're doing today. New companies appear in the market every single day. New technologies emerge and companies become more complex. The big challenge is learning to live with this scenario of constant change and adapt this to the new model. And the question I ask is, how will companies adapt and follow this whole new dynamism of the market while being driven by manual or paper-based processes? Companies need to grow and mature, and automated processes help them navigate this path and increase business performance. It is in this sense that process automation is imperative. People stop engaging in repetitive activities and can focus on higher value-added activities. This raises productivity in companies and they become more competitive. On a day-to-day basis, we talk about processes and we are involved with processes, but what effectively characterizes a business process? I'll illustrate the concept so everyone has the same understanding, okay? A business process is nothing more than a set of activities or tasks which are structured and related, and which in the end generate a result, which can be a product or a service. So in a nutshell, this is the main concept of a process. Let me give you two examples to illustrate it better. Imagine a company where there is a purchase order process. People from various departments such as human resources, marketing, and logistics use this process to request the purchase of materials that are necessary to carry out the work on a day-to-day basis. The entry of this process can be an email or a form which the employees fill out information like the type of material quantity, and later on, the form is sent to the immediate manager to be approved, and to finish the request, it arrives in the purchasing area that then provides the material. Another example, imagine a bank which receives a client or broker requesting credit for the purchase of a property or let's say a vehicle. The process works in a very similar way. It starts with the completion of a request, which will then be submitted for a risk analysis to consider the client's profile, and later to a manager for evaluation and a decision on whether or not to approve the requested credit. Now, imagine what happens in these companies where the processes are executed manually. What are the difficulties that arise in everyday life when the processes occur in this way? There are several obstacles, but here we're going to show you those that we understand as being the more critical. The first one is the lack of visibility. The process manager cannot get a glimpse of how many purchase requests and how many credit requests are in progress. It is difficult to know where each process is stopped, who is responsible, and it is also difficult to control timelines. This is even more critical when there are indicators linked to these deadlines. How do statistics need to be evaluated manually, and how can you ensure the information is reliable? Another difficulty relates to the communication between the different departments involved. How can you ensure that a document that came out of Department A actually arrived in Department B? Department A says it delivered, and Department B says it did not receive, and then that tug of war begins. There is a lot of risk of lost documents and lost information. And so the chaos grows. Since the document has been misplaced and you do not have control over the process, whomever made the purchase request before will need to make the request again, which will generate rework and slow down the process. The person who made the request will probably need to forward the email again or make a phone call to know the status of the process. If the purchase has already been made, they will need to know the delivery time of the material. These activities do not add value to work and compromise productivity. Often, to have some kind of control over the manual processes, to keep track of deadlines, responsibilities, statuses, and etc., spreadsheets are used. The problem is that all of this information needs to be cleared manually, and the spreadsheet feed also occurs manually. This results in a fragile control because in addition to the possibility of people forgetting to update information, the worksheets are more open and they accept any information. And finally, the lack of reliable information hinders the decision-making process by managers. How do you decide on path A or path B if you lack input to substantiate a decision? Continuing on with the presentation, we'll now talk a little bit about what it means to automate a business process. This definition basically consists of transforming stages that were carried out in a strictly manual manner in procedures that, as a technology, become more efficient, promotes transparency, and simplifies the execution of repetitive tasks. It is important to emphasize that automation does not serve to replace human activity, but to optimize resources and facilitate or work two professions of a general nature. Drawing on more examples, imagine a company with several departments and units of business, each of which is daily managing dozens of requests for human resources, for the contracting of new employees. How do you ensure that employees will be hired within the period requested? How do you ensure that the day you start work, the new employees will have a room ready and available resources to perform their activities? A computer or a phone, for example. Imagine managing all these demands manually without an automated tool to assist you. It is virtually impossible to comply with the objectives of this process, without which a problem occurs. With an automated workflow, everything gets simpler. Each manager will have a simple starting point where you can send a request, which will process between the different areas that need to be involved in hiring, such as human resources, IT, training, and among others. The people responsible for each step will already be set, so it becomes easier to monitor the process, know who's working, what the workload of each employee involved is, and how many requests are being made at the time. Automation allows you to promote the scale, namely working in parallel with multiple instances of a process, dramatically reducing the gaps, inconsistencies, and loss of information. When is it necessary to automate a process? Usually at the initiative of two organizations. It can be part of a corporate strategy that envelops the process in which automation is a step in the project. Or it can be a current situation where a problem and the automation process was understood as the best solution or the most appropriate solution. Does it give initiative, or does it stimulate companies to search for the automation of business processes? One of the reasons may be the search for error reduction in repetitive processes. So, if the company identifies a process with a history of errors, rework, and generates the results, it is a good time to think about automation as a way to encourage improvements. Another reason may be the need to standardize a good practice. This is important when there is a process with several people involved and each proceeds differently in time to perform your activity. Through automation, you can standardize the techniques identified as best to accomplish a particular task. The automation can also promote transparency in the process. In this way, the leaders, managers can follow the process of the activities in a simple and quick way, identify where a particular instance is stopped, how long it took to run, and so on. Another motivator can be the need to ensure consistency of the information handled by the process. Return to the example of the process that involves a credit request. The automation can ensure the process does not proceed if any information is missing. Then the process will not get to the end at the time of decision making as to approve or not to approve the credit to the depositor without the risk analysis being carried out previously. And finally, the search for greater productivity and operational efficiency can have in automation is the answer. Many have probably already heard, know, or even are customer of these transportation companies via apps. To become partners, drivers need to register by sending copies of personal documents, vehicle documents, among others. Imagine how difficult and exhausting it would be if the company received this documentation in physical forms. With all the information and interaction with partner drivers occurring electronically, companies can be more productive and efficient. Our focus in this presentation has been on automation of processes. However, it doesn't always work, or it's not always the best option to solve all problems. Now, let's look at some situations where process automation is not recommended. Processes that are very simple are not good candidates to be automated. Imagine a two-step process, a request and an approval, for example. It is often not worth all of the effort that needs to be applied to automate a process with these characteristics. It is often difficult to demonstrate to managers that there have been improvements and to achieve significant results. This may end up making other similar projects unfeasible in the future. Processes that are executed sporadically. Some types of requests are executed once a year. It is generally not the type of process that generates a headache for the company, and it is not a good candidate to be automated. There are situations where cost for automation outweighs the benefits. It is necessary to evaluate the processes well, because in these cases, the return on investment is very low and makes automation unfeasible. As with any business-critical processes, automation must have specific accountability for its success. That is why the support of the manager is fundamental. They need to be involved in tracking the processes, monitoring the progress of activities, and taking action when necessary to ensure the progress of workflows. In an unfamiliar process, without a responsible person, the chances for problems are great. When automation ends up creating barriers for customers, its viability needs to be carefully considered. There are some cases of companies offering a telephone answering service. Imagine that the customer calls an 800 number and an automated tool answers the call and asks the customer to say what they're looking for. The automated tool doesn't always interpret the request and directs the service in the correct way. The customer may have found the company to request a repair service, but ends up being transferred to the sales department for a new product. Instead of facilitating, it ends up frustrating the client and making the experience very negative. When selecting processes, what characteristics or what kinds of processes would be interesting for automation initiatives? Although automation is robust enough and guarantees the functionality of more complex processes, starting the transformation from the most difficult type to the entire process becomes more complicated. Start the automation with a simple process. It is important to look for routine processes that are characterized by repetitive activities. Imagine a company that receives sales orders from its representatives. Each order begins with the registration of the items, code information, quantities while passing through validation loops until the billing stage arrives. Rather than receiving representatives' data by email, the process could be automated. It is neither a complex nor a very long process, but at the same time, it is a process that needs to be trusted. The company can also evaluate processes with a high incidence of errors. For example, the process of registering new products in ERP. Generally, this workflow goes through several areas such as engineering and quality so that it receives a code, description, details for taxation, and so on. They are more important details because if the purchase order of the unit measure is 1 and in the ERP it is registered with another number, it is already a point that can generate problems. Processes that are slow in nature. In the public sector, for example, the preparation of a bidding document goes through several areas. Several people are involved in giving technical opinion, legal opinion, and so on until the publication of the public notice. All of the steps need to be orchestrated so that the preparation of the notice is not lost and thus avoid situations such as the cancellation of an edit or rectification or a complement of missing information. Processes that are critical to the organization. In this case, I'll show you another example. Imagine a fleet management company where eventually the vehicles in this fleet engage in some type of traffic violation, which eventually results in fines. The company needs to ensure that the fines are paid by the due date to prevent the vehicle from being picked up by transit agencies, causing other inconveniences. There are processes from the beginning until its completion to pass through 3 or 4 different systems. The information is scattered, and again, it is difficult to follow the progress and control deadlines and responsibilities. It is often possible to simplify this by centralizing all of the information into a single workflow. There are some processes that are even implemented in the ERP but do not allow changes. Sometimes the customer needs a more flexible approval flow, and it cannot be implemented in an ERP. For the automation project to succeed, it is also important to be aware of a few points and follow some steps. Do not start straight to the automation process, as it can lead to some stumbling. Identify what problems the process presents today and what results you want to achieve with workflow automation. Mapping the as-is process, that is, how it occurs today, is important in understanding the correct sequence of activities, and it also helps identify bottlenecks. Then, the stream must be mapped in the to-be condition. It provides the future view of the process by incorporating the improvements to meet the bottlenecks previously identified. Processes should always be validated by the people who are involved in it on a day-to-day basis. It is essential that this is done at each step because in case of any deviation, it is easier to fix and avoid wasting time and resources. The automation results in changes in the way people perform their activities. This also facilitates the acceptance of the technology and the new way of working. Finally, the process can be automated on the selected platform, and the people should be empowered in the new tool. This step is especially important because if those involved in the process are not adequately trained, the solution cannot be used to its fullest potential. As I said in the beginning of the presentation, the business environment is not certain and it always changes. So, the speed and agility to adapt to the demands of the market is what gives a company a competitive advantage. So today, when a company decides to automate their processes, what is important to consider? If it needs to hire a BPM platform to manage its processes, for example, what features does it need to take into account? That's why we present a relationship with the 7 fundamental ingredients for success in the automation of business processes. Number 1, integration. Processes generally do not run across only one area and depend on information from other systems. So, the first ingredient is integration. The automation platform needs to facilitate the exchange of information with other departments, as well as allowing the integration between different systems. After all, maintaining the same information in 2 different locations compromises the reliability and agility of the process, which can generate rework and communication problems. Look for tools that enable integration through technologies such as API or web service. Collaboration. By integrating different departments, collaboration is also promoted. This is another key ingredient as it simplifies document sharing, access to information, and speeds up deliveries. Collaboration positively impacts the productivity and progress of workflows. Analytics. As the processes are automated, they begin to generate large amounts of data. That's why analytics is another important ingredient. Based on current historical and operational references, it helps to interpret data, anticipating and predicting results which can be transformed into actions for process optimization and performance improvement. So companies will have a much better chance of maintaining continuity and long-term growth, especially as timely information will be more readily available to support decision-making. Mobility. Today, it is virtually impossible to think of automating processes without considering the issue of mobility. The popularization of the use of mobile devices, the ability to perform tasks and follow the process in the palm of the hand, is no longer a luxury, it is a necessity. Managers can track indicators and take actions in real time from anywhere, streamlining the progress of the process. Freedom. It is important that the company has control over the automated process on the platform. This means that users or business analysts can promote changes in flows, add new features, or move process to other departments without relying on the vendor. Development without programming. During automation or implementation of improvements in flows, the company will need to define conditions and other rules of the process, and for this, there are still many automation tools which depend on the implementation of codes through some type of programming language. The point is that business analysts do not always have technical expertise at this level. Choose an automation solution that provides wizards or visual aids and make it easy to implement these rules, allowing even people with little technical knowledge to deploy it. So companies can adapt to new demands more quickly without relying on IT. Scalability. And the last ingredient for successful process automation is that the chosen automation platform is flexible. As the company grows, processes change and can become more complex. The market has many tools that are not scalable, and at some point, you will not be able to meet the demands, forcing you to search for another supplier. So you need to be careful to select a platform that can evolve along with your organization and continue to support your departments as they grow. Now, we're near the end of this presentation, and now I would like to talk to you a little bit about how SoftExpert has been helping companies overcome the challenges of process improvements and automation. In addition to the consulting services I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, SoftExpert develops a BPM platform, a business process management system that assists in managing the entire life cycle of a process. When companies start working on some management initiative process, they often do not know all of the processes or even do not know their own business processes. They just have an idea of how they work, and often this know-how is only in a person's mind. At this moment, SoftExpert's BPM solution begins to support in the discovery, definition of processes, in the survey of documentation, and other related information. Once the company has a vision and understands what the processes are, the solution provides resources for modeling these flows from the moment the value chain map is defined, that is, when the organization is seen not as a set of areas or departments, but as a set of interrelated processes. It continues to support the unfolding of this stage to the level of business processes where activities, decisions, and roles that can be departments, people, etc. It also manages all parts of the process documentation through information such as inputs, outputs, risks, indicators, then the control system that the tool helps to implement. The solution also deals with process simulation, and this is a very important point while the processes are being mapped and before being transformed into automated flows, as it helps identify bottlenecks. Certain processes are extensive, composed of several steps with various roles involved, and often identifying bottlenecks is not a simple task. Through the simulation, it is possible to create different scenarios and identify where the process is causing disruption either due to delays or high costs, and then it is possible to create improvements and optimization actions. From the moment the processes are inside the tool, it has resources to simplify the distribution of flows to all of the people involved. All are notified by email and have access to the stream. Users can consult the process to understand how it works and can consult the documentation and indicators. The solution also offers an electronic form designer. These forms that were processed in paper before are drawn inside the tool and begin to follow the activities of the electronic form. There are several components that aid in form modeling, such as text fields, images, date, time, as well as rules editors, which assist in validating the filled information. These forms can also be run through mobile devices. This way, users can generate workflows and managers can approve the demands directly on their smartphones or tablets. As processes are being executed, they can be monitored through different portals where it is possible to keep track of deadlines, departments where they are stopped, which process generate the highest number of instances, among others. Each area and each manager who has a process under his responsibility can create different portals by posting information that is relevant to his area or his team. The portals can also be shared with different people or areas. As the process runs on the platform, they begin to generate a volume of information that can be stratified through the analytics tool. Through this history, it is also possible to better understand some situations, besides providing insights on possible points of improvements. From these analyses, you can review and generate new versions of the process. The system does the revision control of the flows and stores the old versions for historical purposes. Well, folks, we've reached the end of our webinar. I hope that in this brief time, I've been able to highlight the main points that should be considered when thinking about the improvement and automation of processes. If you have any questions or if you'd like to know more about SoftExpert solutions for process management, please contact us. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Gus, and thanks to all of you who took part in this presentation. If you have any questions or would like to get in touch with Mr. Oliveira, please email him at gustavo.oliveira@softexpert.com. For more webinars, please visit our website at www.softexpert.com. See you next time.